Dyed-in-the-wool.
Dyed-in-the-wool anarchist.
Yeah. I'm an anarchist in two ways. I'm an anarchist by temperament, but I didn't figure out I was an anarchist by political and philosophy for a while, till I was about, I don't know, in my early 30s. Because I was, I was an SDS, and, I thought, democratic socialism was the way to go, because I didn't understand what anarchism was about. I thought anarchism meant Bakunin, blow everything up. It's decentralization, it's grassroots, it's respect for other people, deep down respect for people. I mean, seriously, trying to put yourself and walk a mile in the other person's moccasins, or whatever you want to put it. I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut, on 72 South Main Street, which is my grandparents' house. And my grandfather moved there from Hester Street in somewhere around 1908, 1910. He was the first Jewish doctor in Norwalk. His father, sweated in a tailor shop to send his son, like all Jews, to medical school or to law school, so he went to medical school. And he was very fitted for that because he loved what he did. He truly, my mother said that he shared his life with his family. So at lunch, at the supper, the main meal was lunch, and everybody came home from school or work or whatever, and he would tell them about their cases and stuff. And he was really a remarkable person. He never took money if he realized they didn't have any money. He got paid in chickens and radishes and strawberries, and I remember this lady coming in with radishes and strawberries and beets and stuff. And he came to be consulted all over Fairfield County because he was a very, very good diagnostician. And he was a good person. I loved it. My mother had two sisters, and they grew up in this house in Norwalk, and the usual thing, the immigrants want their kids to go to school and get married good, their daughters, and they're supposed to marry nice and everything, so.
What was your childhood like?
Well, it was very good before my father came back from the war, because my mother's sisters were younger, and so they were like older sisters to me, and they used to take me to the beach, and take me out with their friends, and just drag me around because I was the novelty. So it was a very warm family in the beginning, and then when he came back, they moved to another place, and it was pretty depressing. But I always had plenty of food, which was my chief concern. And I had books and whatever, that Jews give to their children, music lessons if you want them, and whatever. I didn't take advantage of everything because I didn't feel, had any particular talents in the arts, so I just read philosophy because it attracted me. I had a philosophical temperament, and I found that after my grandfather died, that the one thing I wasn't going to do was become a doctor, which I thought I would go into practice with him. But he died when I was 9, and I thought, man, I'm not doing this. I hate this. I started reading philosophy when I was about 12. And I got involved in politics when I was about 14. I had been in the student group of the Committee for Say Nuclear Policy, and then when I was 16, I joined SDS at the almost beginning, right after the Port Huron statement was put out, which is their original statement of purpose and whatever. I also got involved in the Civil Rights Movement because when they threw the sharecroppers off their land in Fayette and Haywood counties in Arkansas because they tried to vote, we organized a food and blanket drive, and my mother, of course, gave me blankets and canned goods and whatever, and I helped collect everything from other people. And because it was a middle-class place, of course, everybody contributed, and because it was Jewish, they understood very well the connection between, and they were close enough to the Holocaust to understand the meaning of what was happening. I mean, shit, I grew up with those horrible stories from the time I was 4 years old. And the first thing I said to my grandparents was, how come you came here then? Why did you come here then? Because I thought it could have been me there, because if my grandparents had remained, I would have been in a concentration camp. I would have been murdered and tortured and God knows what. I used to have nightmares about that. So, I mean, it was really a serious deal for me.
How did you come to art?
I got sick, and I didn't have anything to do because I had to not do anything because I was so sick. I had such bad asthma. I was like in bed for almost 2 years. So I figured, I'll just go see some stuff. And, you know, because one of the things, I have a background in my family. My grandmother's younger sister was a theatrical agent, pretty well known. She was a good friend of Brecht and Weill, and she had the rights of all Brecht's works in this country until she died in 1984. And she was very close. She had an affair with Lenya at one point. And I went to see all the Brecht stuff when I was little. She got tickets for me and my grandmother to go to the Theatre de Lys, which was the hotel, to see Threepenny Opera when I was 14. And then she took me to see Brecht on Brecht, and then she took me to see Mother Courage, and then one exciting thing she did is she took me backstage, and I met Lenya. That was incredible. And she told me something interesting, which I never know, that the original moguls in Hollywood were from this little region in Russia, and they were all these little Russian Jews who hired only sixes to play the major role, female roles, and it was really funny. And I remember that there was another story that's famous. The Marx Brothers once came into Louis B. Mayer's office, and they were waiting for him to come in. You know, they had an appointment, and they were sitting there, and he walks in, and they're totally naked, four of them. That was like a joke, right? I mean, you know, so it was not only loose here, but it was loose out there.
Did your family accept you?
Well, I didn't have the balls to be, well, she wasn't out to the family either, but I didn't have the balls to come out till I was almost 30. I was like 28 or 29. So you can see how I'm definitely your dyed-in-the-wool coward here. So it was safe to come out, more or less.
But were you always butch?
Yeah, but nobody was like surprised or anything. So they and my mother was pissed. She said, "Oh, you're a pervert." But you know, after a while, you know, that was in 1974. In 1994, around when my father was dying, she said, "You know, I want to apologize to you. I grew up in a small town. We didn't have to talk about these things, and I didn't even know that, you know, that my Aunt Bertha was gay until whatever." I said, "But, you know, the sisters knew, but they didn't say anything, whatever." So then she said, "But now I realize that gay people are just people, and it doesn't matter." She really meant it. And since I was 4, I was very aware little kid. I knew definitely I wasn't marrying a boy, I was going to marry a girl. Well, I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it. I was smart enough for that. I kept it under my, whatever you want to call it. I kept it to myself. I didn't discuss it with anybody. But evidently it was clear to my aunt, who was gay, that I was gay. By the time I was 12, 13, she really became quite a very good mentor for me. She was really wonderful to me. And like I said, she took me a lot of places and did things with me and spent time with me and stuff. And she didn't tell me specifically at the time that she was gay because she was afraid that I would let it slip by accident. I'm positive because, and, you know, I am a loose, I was known for my big mouth. Not that anything important or big came out of it, but, you know, I just blabbed a lot. The only way I wasn't a coward was I wasn't afraid to fight against racism, because I knew that racism meant anti-Semitism as well, and because I believed that people should care about each other regardless of who or what they were, on a really deep level. It's really hard for me to describe my feelings. I'm just starting to recognize they exist. I mean, you know, I'm aware that I have them, but I mean, not as well as when I do Tai Chi and Qigong and stuff. I'm really beginning to get a more detailed picture of my inner landscape. I think being a teenager and being in your 20s is a lousy time of life, personally. I wouldn't trade the wisdom I've gained over the years for any kind of youth or anything. And you know, it's just that I know what's out there, and I know that I'm like smarter or whatever than average, but I also know that there are so many people that have so much more that really know what they're doing, you know. And I'm not at that point yet. I'm working it. I'm working on it.
Today I'm so happy to see everyone. We are here today to give tribute to a wonderful person, a very generous person, unlike anyone I ever met. And we've got a very good program today. You've been listening to the music of the Cosmos, and the images were done by Jamie Leo. And whoever wants to come up and speak, you can do that after the next. After me, okay. So everyone who wants to share their love and feelings for Carsin should do that now. Last thing on the program is a film called Haitian Initiation. We went to Haiti in 1979, and we went to a performance, a voodoo ceremony, which really was a performance because it was for tourists. And the male dancers had asked some boys to come up on stage and dance, and no boy would come up. And they would say, "Garçon, garçon," and no boy would come up. And when they said "Garçon" to Carsin, within 1 second, she was performing with the dancers. She didn't think twice about it. She just got up and performed with them. And I fortunately had a still camera with me. I had 3 cameras with me, and with black and white film. And so I took these still photographs of the ceremony, of the voodoo ceremony. And many years later, I worked on an animation stand and made a film. And the film is called Haitian Initiation. And I put Maya Daren's some music from her merengue album, which is Papa Gay de Bel Garçon. And Papa Gay leads the carnival parade and represents life and death. And it's just a wonderful song to accompany the film. So feel free to come up and speak now. Thank you.
Do this without breaking up, I'll be lucky. Stay. I'm Jonathan Slav, and I was the press agent here at La Mama for 15.5 seasons, and for the first, I don't know, 50% of my tenure. Jonathan Slav and Associates, a lot of the time meant me and Carsin. And I met Carsin at TNC, and I don't remember how it started, but I was probably there late at night stuffing envelopes and wondering how I could get through my commitments if I had to do my own mailings, and somehow she became my mailroom. And, you know, I couldn't afford to pay her much considering what the theaters were paying me. And I don't have to elaborate on that to anybody. So it was a gift of generosity on both of our parts. I don't know if you call it generosity or insanity. What it is a complete lack of self-interest. A fatal lack of self-interest. And being with Carsin was its own reward. She was the most remarkable mind I ever stayed with. And I have to say, you know, a lot of you knew her. And a lot of you knew her better than I did. But I don't think anybody got the best of her more than I did. Because we got to spend so much quality time, because you get a lot of quality time with somebody when you're stuffing on for them. You know, when I came in and I saw Velois, she said she wasn't coming in. Maybe she's here now and made a liar of herself, but she said she wants to remember Carsin when she came in, and she'd insist on folding the programs. Carsin had a way with paper, what can I tell you? But I used to have, you know, working for La Mama and these very, you know, worldly theater clients that I had, of course I have a lot of, and still do, I have a lot of very, what was to me obscure subject matter that I would need to explain. And then, thank God, I had Carsin, because she knew everything. I'd have a show about Santeria, and she'd explain it to me. When I was, you know, my parents paid for a lot of education, but there was a lot of stuff that got around me. But if I had Carsin, I had a reference library. And, you know, this was before the internet. Who needed the internet? I had Carsin. And she loved to eat. Boy, did we eat a lot together. Because I'd order for us, you know, we get deliveries. And she kept on breaking her diet, you know. She was resolved to eat healthy. And then, well, no, it was funny. Like, sometimes she wouldn't do it in front of me. You know, actually, as I think about it, I shouldn't have opened my mouth, because she was always on her good behavior with the diet when she was eating with me. Then I'd see her cheating. And she'd be eating these rich things that she said were fatal. But when I was doing a show at TNC, and I couldn't, I had to leave in rehearsal because I was so sick. I had the GI groans. And she called, and I said, she didn't know that I was sick, you know, she called about something else, and I said how sick I was. And we talk about your bowels a lot, you know. It's just kind of, we're two Jews, you have if you have two Jews in one room, you have 4 conversations about your bowels. So she told me that I should go, she said, can you walk? I said, yeah. She says, well, you know, you have that health food store down on Hudson Street. Go down there, and if they have ginger or peppermint or chamomile, fresh ginger, she made me swear to buy fresh, I should boil it and make myself a tea, and I'd feel better. So I got some ginger and some chamomile and some peppermint, and I made a tea. And then she called me a little later. She said, how did it turn out? I said, it was great. I finally got, you know, I unburdened myself, and just like you said, I felt better. And I was able to get to rehearsal again the next night. But boy, it was powerful, Carsin. She said, well, you weren't, she said, what'd you make? And I said, I made peppermint, chamomile, and ginger. She said, not all 3, one of them. Well, she didn't tell me moderation. She knew me better. Maybe she should have known better. When my daughter was born, the first person in St. Vincent's to see Julia was Carsin. This is the kind of person she had. Carsin was generosity on feet. That was Carsin. And I don't know what I'm going to do without her. You know, I could always call Carsin for a detached view of anything, including myself. And so many people were in her life that I hardly knew. You know, I hardly knew Marguerite. And she didn't really talk about anybody. And I knew things I wasn't supposed to know about her, like her real name, and I'm not telling you that. I'm afraid something bad might happen. There was some reason why she kept things under wraps. I didn't ask questions. She knew I loved knives, and I was a fisherman. She gave me the best fillet knife that you could imagine. And I would go, where are you getting the money for this, you know? You shouldn't be spending money on me. I should be giving you money for all you did for me over the years. And after she wasn't, so I got her, you know, I got her into La Mama, and I got her to work in the box office, because La Mama would have these periodic times when it couldn't afford to have people, and she'd volunteer and stuff. And then I thought, you know, if there was only some way that I could help Carsin learn new skills that she could find more ways of getting good work. So Merrill Vladimir was the administrator of Le Mans at the time, and Merrill and I would always think of things for Carsin to do. And Carsin was such a good soldier, she'd do them, and most of the time she hated them. Especially when we got her to sit down at the computer. It was purgatory. She used to bring me these handwritten lists, volumes, stacks of paper, you know? And then occasionally we get her to convert it into something, but she did not like the keyboard. And I had a broken old Jeep, and boy, when I needed help in knowing how to take care of the Jeep, she knew the mechanics on the Lower East Side, and she knew where to send you. And she was a brake technician, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she knew all about the brakes. And she knew who knew about everything else. So consequently, my Jeep lasted much longer than it should have. And because, you know, my budget for car repairs was not much more than hers. And then she always was really interested in my family, and especially my daughter Julia. And when Julia and I went to her, she had this wonderful party not this past summer, but the summer before. She invited everybody, and she had it in the courtyard of her building. And I couldn't understand, you know. I was afraid that was a farewell. I was afraid she was sick, you know, because I thought, something's about this. Why is she bringing us all together, you know? And I said, what's going on? What's really going on? Are you okay? She said, yeah, I got some money from my mother, and I wanted to have a party. Wonderful, you know? It was great. So I got to meet some of her family then, you know, and some of her friends. And I didn't hear about Carsin's death until I picked up a flyer at TNC. And then, of course, my first reaction was, why didn't I hear about this? Of all people, why should this have been a secret from me? It happened in July. So I went to the copy place on 2nd Avenue, and because they had the thing in the window, you know, and I said, hey, what happened to Carsin? And so the lady there told me a little bit, you know, and I don't know how I'm going to get by without Carsin. You know, after Carsin, there was Bill Johnson. She fixed me up with Bill Johnson, who did my mailings until, again, you know, he was another soldier who did them for longer than he should have. Another person who didn't know what was good for himself. And we all did more for the artists that we were working for than we were ever expected to. Carsin was a one-man engine of propaganda. She'd run around and tell everybody, you know, and she'd call you on the phone and she'd say, you have to see this. And she was always there whenever something was going on. If Carsin wasn't there, you didn't have a show. And I'm going to miss her so much. And she had such a Jewish heart, you know? But she didn't consider herself a Jew. She just considered that she had Jews in her background. I mean, what I'm saying is at variance with Penny's film. Penny's film is awesome. That was something, wasn't that? That was Carsin. You got the real stuff out of her.
Where's Penny?
I don't know.
Penny's here.
Penny's here? Oh. I saw that film and I could smell Carsin. Well, I'm going to miss. I don't know how I'm going to get by without her. And you know, Carsin was one of the strengths that kept me going. You know, really. I don't think she ever realized how many people depended on her wisdom. See, Penny captured it when she got her to talk about her wisdom. Because Carsin was so wise. There was nobody wiser than Carsin. And she was a renegade intellect, but such an intellect. And she knew everything and everybody. And I don't know how she absorbed so much stuff. But that was our Carsin. Well, I better let somebody else talk. I could go on much, much longer, but thank you very much for this time.
unusually miss improvisation. I really feel way too emotional, so I just wrote something. I also want to read something from Ellie Covan from Dixon Place. She sent this to me this morning to read. Pardon? Where are you? I'm Penny Arcade. Hi. Sorry. Thank you all so much for having a memorial for Carsin. I'm sorry I can't be there. Nonprofits like Dixon Place can't survive without volunteers, and no one was as dedicated and supportive as Carsin. As the first person people saw when they'd enter the space, and unquestionably the most enthusiastic audience member, Carsin was a valuable member of the Dixon Place family. I'm sure everyone will agree that Carsin was one of a kind, the real deal. We miss her. I have a lot of trouble accepting or believing that Carsin is gone. For over 20 years, Carsin supported my work, understood what I was doing when few did, and was always ready to help me at any moment. Whether it was helping with a mailing, doing the door for me, or helping to carry Jack Smith's stuff down 7 flights of stairs, she did this without hesitation or excuses, despite having serious health issues all her life. Carsin had an amazing brain and a wide range of knowledge, which she freely shared. She lived her politics. She supported both new and younger artists as well as mid-career artists, and she knew the difference and understood the difference between them. She didn't refer to every performer she knew as a legend. She understood every point of development in the arc of an artist's work, and though she denied it, she could make salient statements about the work of nearly every artist downtown. Last year, when I was deathly ill with hepatitis and on the hepatitis C protocol, she went out of her way to try to assist me, even though she was as sick as I was. When I developed a lung problem from interferon, she did research for me and sent me loads of written material that she Xeroxed onto scrap paper. She wrote me an extraordinary letter 2 weeks before her death, which I will always treasure and draw sustenance from. I was honored to be able to interview her, although she put me off for several years, claiming she wasn't important enough. A phrase I know I will never hear on the Lower East Side again. The interview that you saw an excerpt of that Steve Zettner and I did with Carsin was moving, amazing, outlandish, and larger than life like Carsin. I know that if it's possible to help people from across the grave, Carsin will be busy. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Chris Rail, and I'm a composer. And the last time that I saw Carsin was in January when she came to Dixon Place to see a workshop of an operetta that I've been working on. And when Carsin would come to my performances, I always felt deeply honored in a different way by her presence and her interest, because Carsin participated in the lives of the people in her community, you know, and she certainly an inspiration how to be, how to live. Artists and creative people, just by the nature of what they do, spend a lot of time with the question, who am I, who am I, who am I? Carsin knew who she was. She, I'm not talking about ego, I'm talking about dignity. Her dignity imbued her with this kindness and generosity and supportive nature that we all know and love and miss. And I'll always regard her as one of the great women that I've known. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Nicky Corizzo. I'm a performer, and I'm also work here at La Mama as a performance curator, and it's my duty and privilege to welcome you to La Mama. Welcome everyone, and on behalf of Ellen Stewart, thank you for being here and to honor Carsin. I just wanted to say a few special thank yous to Marguerite, Carsin's family, Sarah Shulman, Penny Arcade for that beautiful video, Jamie Leo, and Jim Hubbard. And I also wrote something because I've been also known to go off for too long, and I'd like to sing a song, and so I'm going to get there, but I did write something. It's fitting and correct that Carsin be honored here today at La Mama. Carsin had carte blanche for any show she wanted to see in any of the theaters here, and to come see the shows of the many artists she wanted to come support and cheer on. I'm sure that became true as well at most of the other theater and performance venues, PS 122, Dixon Place, Theater for the New City, downtown. She was one of a kind. She was our champion, our advocate, our most loyal fan, our confidant, our big sister, our best friend. Carsin loved us all. Actors, dancers, choreographers, musicians, composers, designers, poets, playwrights, directors, presenters, and producers. We were her community of artists and neighborhood activists. She embraced us all into her huge and generous heart, and she was loved, embraced, and cherished in return. It's a testament to that legacy to see so many of you here this afternoon. She's much loved and missed. And it was indeed very moving for me to learn at the funeral service last June how much she loved her family in New Jersey, and how much she was cherished by her siblings and nieces and nephews and other relatives. As a performer, you knew you were home free when you heard Carsin's distinctive laugh, or the way she gasped out loud, or freely offered quite vocal words of support from her chair in the audience. I remember her as a loyal fan and audience member during weekly performances of the great Jeff Weiss's Hot Keys at PS 122 in the mid-90s. Jeff sends his love from Allentown. I also remember Carsin as a congenial, convivial, and welcoming house manager at both Theater for the New City and at PS 122. I'm sure many of you here today were recipients of her kindness and generosity during sold-out performances, or if you didn't have enough money that week to buy a ticket that night, Carsin would just sneak you in for free. No wonder she finally had to be fired from those jobs. And then there was Carsin as the East Village resident and social and political activist, and also inevitably the caring human being and individual. Just last year, Carsin had her apartment painted and renovated. I remember her being so thrilled, and I remember the party she threw for herself in the backyard of her apartment building with family, friends, and neighbors attending. I was going through an awful time with my own apartment, having lived as a pack rat for 30 years, and when I finally had to get rid of 90% of accumulated stuff in my apartment, Carsin and I made a pact to visit each other's apartments as a sign of neighborly support for each other. So I made a visit to Carsin's newly renovated apartment, and she in turn came to see my recently emptied apartment just before it was repainted. She blessed my space as I had visited her. In that context, she was completely selfless, not thinking of herself at all. She was just there to be with you and share that moment with you. That could also be a defining way to look at her relationship to a lifetime of the performances she ever went to. She was one of a kind, Carsin was. This is a song by Kurt Weill. I was happy to hear that she met Lottie Lenya, my gosh. That I know Carsin heard many times at Hot Key shows. It's about yearning and longing and perhaps desiring someone or something which is perhaps finally unattainable. But the person singing the song never gives up the search. Today this song is for Carsin, who never gave up that search. Okay. Momo, does this bend? No. Okay. Okay, I'll sing, I'll play the piano as Ellen Stewart herself tells me, baby, you're just better at playing the piano. Stop that talk. Okay. You know more than I should tell you. I've been following trails. I've been staring at ships for a certain pair of eyes and a certain pair of lips. Yes, I've looked everywhere. You can look without wings, and I've found a great variety of interesting things. I've been following signs. I've been searching through the lands for a certain pair of arms and a certain pair of hands. Yes, I've tried a kiss here, and I've tried a kiss there, for when you're out in company, the boys and girls will pair, but it never was you. It never was anywhere you. An occasional sunset reminded me, or a flower hanging high on a tulip tree, or one red star hung low in the west, or a heartbreak call from a meadowlark's nest made me think for a moment. Maybe it's true, I found you in the star, in the call, in the blue, but it never was you. It never was anywhere anywhere, you.
Whoa, I can't even see you, so I'll just talk off the top of my head. I suspect that I know Carol in a different way from everyone sitting in this room, because I knew Carol as Carol. I can't call her Carsin because I always knew her as Carol. She and I came from New York, these two New York Jews, and landed in Wisconsin. We were like feather on soup. And I was really lucky that I found her as my roommate. She just happened to turn up one day in this little dormitory. And man alive, she was the greatest. She talked to me about Wittgenstein and Hegel and Schlegel and everything, and she was feverishly intellectual. And the main thing that I thought was amazing about her was she started every meal off with dessert. She said, I said, Carol, what are you doing this for? By the way, she used to wear dresses all the time. I was the only one in the world that didn't know. She came out 5 or 10 years later. We were just two girls from New York in Wisconsin. And So I said, why are you starting off with dessert? She said, you know, you never know. Was this Carsin or what? And I think many of you don't know that she and I were so close. For 50 years we were close. We called each other once a week. I called her every Sunday. I was always worried about her. She kept saying, you know, you don't have to worry about me. I'm really okay. Do you need money? I don't need money. Do you need money? I'll give you what you need. As a matter of fact, I gave her some money once. She spent 10 years putting nickels in a cup so that 10 years later, she paid it back. I never wanted the money. She paid it back with interest. I said, this is ridiculous. I don't want the money, and I don't, but that's the generosity part. But she was generous in a different way. It wasn't at all about money. It was about soul. She was always there for me. She was my advocate. She loved me. I loved her. She thought I was the greatest person in the world, and I thought she was the greatest person in the world. She loves my children. She loves my husband. She was always there for my sick son. She visited him once a week. She took care of my son. When I moved away, she said, don't worry, I'll take care of your son. Did you ever meet these kind of people that when you're with them, you know they love you? That's what Carol was. She had this great spirit. If she didn't like you, you knew it too. But you knew. And she wasn't afraid of telling you anywhere what she felt, you know. He's a fucking prick. You can't say that. This is like the normal universe here. You can't talk. I don't care. I don't care. She would say, because she was, as you put it, the real deal. I loved her from the minute I saw her because she was the real deal. She was honest, scrupulously honest. We listened to Enrico Caruso records every day and every night. This is how we had fun. We talked about Wittgenstein. She was writing a PhD in philosophy. I mean, she was the smartest woman I've ever met in my life. She was very kind, very generous. There just isn't another one like her that I've ever met. And I'm so glad, Bobby, I know the family, I know the mother, I know the father, I heard the stories, I worked with her with these problems. Qigong, Tai Chi, I know everything because every week I called her. And she called me. And she came to my Thanksgiving Day every year. And she came to my Passover Seders. And I invited her mother to the Passover Seders because I didn't want her to be alone. But you know what I didn't know? I didn't know that all of you were in her world. And I'm so happy today to know that she was never alone. Because I loved her very much. She loved you and she loved me. And this, Bobby, thank you. Whoever organized this, thank you for calling me out there in San Diego. I'm in the West Coast now. I missed the funeral. But my children were all there, and my son, Jeremy, who she took care of, says that he wished he could be here to see this day, and I'll tell him all about it. So thank you for the opportunity of saying this.
I'm actually reading here on behalf of somebody else who can't be here, but I'm really touched because I thought I was the only one that knew Carsin. I'm such an isolationist, which is, you know, the origin and destiny of my artistic impulses. But, and it's really touching. I'm really, I'm just really touched by all the lives she touched, because I'm an artist. My name is Helen Stratford. For those who are unfamiliar with me, I'm a real minority in the downtown art scene because I'm a middle-aged, non-Jewish heterosaurus, right? Which means there's no funding, no sex, and no one to kvetch to about it. But Carsin, whose magnanimity of heart and intellect could accommodate my freakiness, because that qualifies me as a freak below 14th Street, was always at my shows and so delighted. And it's funny, I didn't know she was Jewish, but, well, the joke is because one of the, every year at Sidewalk Cafe I do a Christmas pageant, but I don't call it Christmas pageant, I call it a Mary Quantico pageant because I don't want to be politically incorrect. And I always say there are no Christians in the Lower East Side. We're all agnostics and atheists, and at the end of the night we get down on our knees and say, "Dear Nietzsche, please grant me bliss." But anyway, this is all silly. But she did, she came to my Mary Quantico pageant, and which was populated by drag queens and Carsin, and me dressed up as an angel with clown face on. But for me, the reason I always knew Carsin is when I moved to the East Village in the 1979, in like the late 70s, it was because I was poor, intelligent, and an artist, and in exile. And the East Village offered a home. And in that respect, the East Village always reminded me of a New Age rendition of either a Brecht play or a Dickens play or a John Steinbeck, you know, a lot of people en route to the imaginary promised land. And I never forgot Carsin's name because she reminded me likewise of Carsin McCullers' Heart of a Lonely Hunter, which is sort of populated by the same sort of disillusioned, bright, intelligent people in exile, but she always let me into her heart. So anyway, but I never knew Carsin, knew anybody. I only ever knew that she came to all my shows and that she loved me and I needed her love, and that when she always dressed like the revolution was at hand and that it was going to be a really happy thing. And no. But I'm glad to hear the stories because one of the things I do is dress up in a corset with fishnets and I play the accordion and I sing Weil in German. So now I understand why she would always be, you know, with me and Carsin it became a parade. All I needed her, I just needed her behind me. But anyway, a woman named Kyra Moffitt, who was her neighbor, called me last week. I didn't even know Carsin had passed. And asked me if I would read at Carsin's memorial service because she couldn't be here. And then she explained that she had died, which I didn't know. And I said, Kyra, how did you know I knew Carsin? And you know, it's all just because of her arts. It's all because of the love and that she had for artists. And you know, she's everybody's greatest publicity agent because you know, if she loved you, everybody else knew of you. So anyway, or knew of her. So anyway, this is what I'm reading on behalf of Kyra Moffitt, who was her neighbor. Carsin, Carol Bloom. If you look up the definition of bloom, Mr. Webster has quite a few ideas about the word. Two of the many listed definitions include: 1, to glow with warmth; 2, a piece of steel. I think these fairly describe our good friend Carsin, for she was as warm as she was strong. My name is Kyra, and I am a neighbor of Carsin's. I choose to use the verb am instead of was because for me there will always be a part of her living here at 153 Avenue A. I regret that I cannot share these thoughts about Carsin in person, but I am in Chicago on business. I am very thankful to Angel and Dick Shea and the entire Shea family and Helen Stratford who kindly agreed to read what I have to share with all of you. Although I was not exactly new to the East Village when I arrived in the summer of 2002, I was a new resident to 153 Avenue A. I was warmly welcomed to the area and the infamous building by two people. First was Bob Olds, my 87-year-old neighbor across the hall, who was happy to have someone with whom he could have a laugh and share a story. Secondly was my dear neighbor Carsin. However, I soon came to realize that she was not only a neighbor, she was a hero, because she always fiercely fought for the good of all the residents of the building, often putting herself on the line. Carsin welcomed me to the building by telling me what was wrong with it, even supplying the necessary documentation. and what to expect of our landlords, for which she was not only brutally honest, but brutally accurate. She then informed me that if I wanted to do some grocery shopping, which direction I should walk depended precisely on what I was buying. Again, she was right. I soon found she was right about a lot of things. I deeply regret that I am unable to attend her memorial service today, because for me, sadly, there is no sense of closure. I was away when she passed on into eternal life, much to my shock and surprise, for we had only spoken the day before I left. Like a parent who you never expect or think will leave you, I always felt comforted knowing she was around. I am keeping her number in my cell phone as a means to offer a prayer for her when I come across it. What matters most in life when you lie in wonder? It may very well be your surroundings and how you got here or there, but the best parts are the memories you can conjure up in your head, like the scenes of your favorite movie. The way you can somehow remember the smile of your grandma, or the smell of her cooking, or the laugh of your favorite aunt, and what have you. Those memories never leave me for some reason, perhaps because in them you find safety and comfort. When I think of Carsin, I smile for 3 reasons: for gratitude, for shared laughter, and for her kind generosity of herself and spirit, and that I believe she shared with everyone. Gratitude. The reason why I cannot be with you today is because I am fulfilling a lifelong dream. I always wanted to make a documentary film about larger women. Both Carsin and Bob were the first people I told about it in a very casual conversation about art, dreams, and projects, a conversation that soon became not so casual. Bob was a retired film editor and immediately offered his advice. And Carsin, in her usual helpful style, was the connection champion of the East Village. She told me who I might call if I wanted to do so. Although it took me 4 years for my project to get off the ground, the hope of my dream, when I first uttered and shared the words, were met with definite and confident smiles and a genuine go-for-it stamp of approval. And Carsin, with a sly half eye open and broad smile, eyeing me from toe to head, blurted out, "Why not? What better reactions and inspiration could there be?" Laughter. Carsin was a fixture in the East Village. I wonder why her picture is not engraved into the documents of those who've lived here. I hope it will be someday. I recall once telling David Leslie and Carsin lived in my building, only to quickly correct myself, realizing that I lived in hers, and that is still true today. With a sailor's vocabulary, she tirelessly tried to help fix and make her building, and often the East Village itself, better in a neighborly, kind way for all the people in it, mattering not if they lived there for 2 days or 2 decades. Everyone was the same. I always admired her strong sense of equality and justice. Her suggestion and kind offers of help, especially in the areas of information, abounded from her slight frame, warm smile, and killer blue eyes. She was always very happy to help and happier to know she could. If I ever mentioned something that went awry in my apartment, I often recall her slowly going up the steps to her apartment, swearing all the way, and usually rightly so. I remember getting worked up about not having a working stove for 8 months and the drudgery of spending money for a daily cup of coffee and cursing left and right and center. She looked at me and smiled as if my street credit with her just went up tenfold, and in her head she was saying, "That a girl," like a proud mother. I laugh when I think of that. Kind generosity of self and spirit. As I began earlier with the question about how we live in wonder about our surroundings, I am not sure whether her death in her own apartment seems fitting or something else. When renovation on her apartment finished, she celebrated not only by herself, but by inviting the whole building to celebrate in the courtyard. She took pride in telling me that she worked out a deal with Cafe Pick-Me-Up so no one would have to run up the stairs for the restroom and the like, always taking great care of those around her, for which great care was taken of her. That is one of the many ways in which she chose to be inclusive, formulating a community atmosphere and showing kindness of spirit and generosity to all at 153 Avenue A and to whomever she came in contact with. She could say a lot because she knew a lot. Few people these days think to include others in their joy. She fought tooth and nail tirelessly, more for others than herself, but for all those tenants residing at 153 Avenue A. If I ever had a problem with them, and I always did, she was always there to support me, either with kind, caring words or an idea of whom to specifically contact. Our toughest and strongest ally, she is surely missed. My apartment is my home because of the people in the building, particularly Carsin. Carsin was also a strong supporter of local arts. Can you believe it? And at times when I didn't have money, always offered to buy me a ticket or let me free into La Mama. Not even getting cross with me when I declined her offer because too bashful to accept. I did join her on occasion. I loved when she always called to inform me of this event or happening. Carsin, I miss you. I miss seeing you in the courtyard, holding the door for you or you for me, and running into you doing Tai Chi in Tompkins Square Park, laughing about our dumbass landlords, and having some kind of laugh, speaking Russian to you and watching you giggle like a schoolgirl. Your soul illuminated the East Village, a light which now grows dimmer by the lack of your energy, humor, and kindness, and our community's fast changes. The school closing on Avenue A and 11th, Stuyvesant Town's recent sale, and the closing of CBGB's. I am almost glad Carsin isn't here to witness, and especially without her, the East Village is no longer the same, and it certainly isn't better, in my opinion. We never really exchanged gifts per se, but for all of you have given me, may these words reach you as they are gifts wherever you may be. May the Lord shed tears of those here today, turning into a light to guide you. Carsin, may your version of heaven include swearing and doing everything you love to do with everything you love to do it with. May there be perpetual light that shines upon you, unless, of course, you don't like that kind of thing. A final note. When this film is completed, Carsin's name will appear in the credits under special thanks. I thank you for letting me share my experience of Carol Carsin Bloom with all of you. Spej my doya agaya spi. Sleep, my dear one, sleep, and God bless.